Lesson N.7, an index for your salary. In addition to reviewing the concepts of absolute change and relative change, in this lesson we will introduce the concept of an index. Learning goals, our students will understand that relative changes in quantities over time can illustrate patterns of growth. Indexes can be useful ways to compare various changing quantities to each other. And students will be able to create an index of relative changes given raw data. In some situations, it's helpful to look at a large set of relative changes in various quantities. An index can be a helpful way to summarize and interpret the relative changes. In this lesson, we will investigate these topics. In this first section, as you go through, they have you match the formulas for absolute change and relative change that we have done previously, along with the salary index and the salary ratio. I would recommend adding this blue table right here to your notes. It has a nice summary of not only each absolute change, relative change, salary ratio, and salary index. It also reviews the units that goes with each. In the problem situation career planning, as you read in the preparation, Gary and Ann are employees at a retail store for a cell phone provider. Gary is a sales associate and Ann is his sales supervisor. Their company offers many opportunities for growth in the organization. For example, Ann was promoted to supervisor from associate about 3 years ago. Gary is starting some long-term planning and wants to decide if he should stay with this company and seek a promotion, or if he wants to explore other options with another company, or even make or try a new career. Gary has access to the following data from the past 7 years about typical salaries for sales associates, sales supervisors, and regional sales managers. Notice that salaries do not always increase from 1 year to the next. Gary wants to get a better idea about how the salaries change over time for each of these positions to gain insight into his earning potential if he stays with the current company. As you can see in this table, the salaries for sales personnel from 2016 to 2013 for sales associates, sales supervisor, and regional sales managers. Question 1 asks, what do you notice about the figures in this table? What are some advantages or disadvantages of only using this table to compare salaries to make a decision? Be sure to describe the advantages and disadvantages quantitatively. So, meaning using the data that was given, what do you notice? And what are some advantages of using this table and what might be some disadvantages of using this table? You can pause the video here and reflect on this question. There are many possible answers. One could be, all the salaries have an overall increase, but there are some fluctuations. The table does show the actual numbers that are typical of each position, but the relative changes and overall comparisons from year to year are not easy to see or interpret in this format. So if we go back to our data here, Question 2 suggests making a quick sketch of a graph or visual display of the data. To make your graph easier to read, consider using different colored ink to represent each of the positions. And we graph it. We're going to do a line for each of those different types of positions. Here is an example of a graph for that data where I did the sales associates in blue, the sales supervisor in orange, and the regional sales manager in gray. Compare to the given table using a line chart makes it a little easier to see these overall trends. So this is a line chart where you plot the data points and you can connect them because it's showing over time. So it's a continuous, which allows us to connect the dots. And this is called a line chart. And this definitely makes it easier for us to see what's happening over time versus the table that was given on the previous in question 1. However, it's still the relative change and overall comparisons from year to year are not easy to see or interpret in this format. One way to compare all 3 positions is by calculating the absolute change measured in dollars and the relative change in percent in the salaries from 2016 to 2013. So question 4 says the table below shows absolute and relative changes in the salaries from the year 2016 to 2023. So that means they're comparing here 2016 to 2023. They're looking at the data for the sales associate in 2016 and the sales associate for 2023. And to calculate absolute change, they're doing the new minus the old. So what's happening in 2023 for sales associate salaries minus what's happening in 2016. To get the relative change, they're taking the absolute change and dividing by the old, which is the 2016 value, and multiplying by 100 to get a percent. They did the same type of thing for each of those positions using the data from question 1. As we compare these, we can see the sales supervisor right here has the highest absolute increase in salary, but the sales associate had the greatest percent, which is the relative increase. So the relative change is actually larger for the sales associate. The amount of the raise for the sales associate is a greater proportion to the starting salary than either of the other positions. For question B, they wanted us to calculate the absolute and relative changes from 2012 to 2022. So we're going to go back to that original table and look at the data for 2021 and 2022. Again, remember absolute change is new minus old, so we just take the data from 2022 and subtract it from the data for 2021. And those absolute changes are recorded here. To get the relative change, we're going to take that absolute change and divide it by the original, which in this case would be the one from 2021, and then multiply by 100 to get the relative change as a percent. I showed some calculations over here. Question C asks which position had the greatest absolute increase in salary and which position had the greatest relative increase in salary. So although the sales associates and sales supervisor, these two, had the same absolute increase of $1,100, it represents a larger proportion of the starting salary for the associate than for the supervisor because the relative change is larger. The regional sales manager actually had a decrease and not an increase. In the next section, they talk about a salary index. So for the salary index, we're going to take the new year divided by the old year and multiply by 100. That's the index. So the ratio is the new over the old, and if you want to write it as a percent, you divide and then multiply by 100. So in this example, we're going to use that in 2022, Gary earned $48,300, but he received a raise in 2023 and it was now earning $53,400. If Gary meets his supervisor benchmark goals in 2023, then he will earn $59,150 in 2024. So using the given information, we want to find Gary's 2023 salary is what percentage of his 2022 salary, and his 2024 salary is what percentage of his 2022 salary, and round each answer to the nearest percent. So in 2023, Gary was making $53,400. We're going to take that value and divide by his value in 2022, which is $48,300, and then to write it as a percent, we'll multiply by 100. The calculation is right here. And then the next one for 2024 salary is what percent of 2022. We're going to take the $59,150, divide by the 2022 salary of $48,300, and then multiply by 100. And this is the calculator calculation there. I also wrote down here the way you could record it and round it to the nearest percent. The 2023 is going to be 111% of the 2022 salary, and in 2024 salary will be 122% of the 2022 salary. And then they just made a little table of each year and what that salary index is, which these indexes are actually percents here. And they say the base year of 2022. That means the denominator of all of those fractions, if you will, are the value that was the salary in 2022. So when it gives you the base year, it means the year you're comparing all of them to. So again, the salary index is the new divided by the old multiplied by 100. So in this table, we're going to be using the 2016 as our base year. And it wants us to find the information for the sales associates, the sales supervisor, and the regional sales manager for each of those years. So using this table, we're going to rewrite those values using the salary index and base them off 2016. The reason why 2016 is 100 for all of those is because if you compare it to that starting base year, and it is the base year, you're going to get 100%. So go ahead and take a minute, pause the video using this formula, figure out each of these values. Again, for example, for 2020 or 2018 sales associate, we'll go under sales associate, we'll take the value $42,800 and we'll divide by the base year, which was 2016, which is $41,500. So for 2018, we are going to, again, for sales associate, do 42,800 divided by the starting of 41,500 times 100. And that would give us the value that's going right there inside the table. Pause the video and give these a try, and then see how you did. And again, I wrote the formulas I used for each of those. And notice each time I'm comparing them to the value in 2016, which is these for each of those different positions. After you finish filling in your table, hopefully you notice that the associate clearly has the greatest relative increase from 2016 to 2023. If you compare those values, sales associate has the greatest. The manager salary is the only one that ever drops below its 2016 amount. And that happens right there in 2019. It dropped below the value in 2016, which made its index less than 100. Every year from 2018 to 2022, the manager's salary was less than its 2017 amount. So its 2017 amount was here, and then for the next few years after that, it dropped. And the manager had a 5% raise after 1 year, and the associates reached a 5% raise after 5 years. So that's something to consider if you were thinking about which job you might be interested in going into. The next one's asking us to make a graph of the indices that we just created on the previous page and discuss what the advantages and disadvantages of using this. So you're going to plot these points on here, similar to what we did before, possibly using a different color for each one. This graph is showing that after about 5 or 6 years, the associate has the greatest relative increase in pay, and the regional sales manager has the overall lowest relative increase in pay. One disadvantage of this graph, compared to the graph we did in question 2, is that the absolute differences in pay between the positions are lost. Now I'd love it if you could try the exercises for lesson N7.